The most honest thing possible is to have a battle of wits end with him more or less punching someone in the face and then making them his servant. And honestly, we know Anos is big brain. We know no one can really get something past him. But just to see the battle of wits where it's basically 20 questions, but he was given 18, and Anos, being the big D that he is, he's like, hey, I only need 9. And honestly, there's not many characters that have that level of arrogance, that overconfidence, that you don't say, you know what, I can't wait to see until they fall on their face. But there's select characters that are just so, they're written in such a way that you can't help but just get a grin and just get a kick out of what's happening when they just had that level of confidence. And him basically trying to uncover the identity of the godchild with 9 questions, and then by the end, he realizes that it was, there was never going to be the truth because of the manipulation. But the fact that in the middle of this dude being so scum, we just see one of his subordinates just get punched in the face, and just the smile just said it all. Like, this is why we love Anos and why we love the Misfit of Demon King Academy. Now, I do got a full live reaction to today's episode available on the Patreon, so consider supporting if you do want to see that. But let's talk about this one. Episode 2. I mean, I thought episode 1 was a great return. It was fun. It was basically everything you expected from Misfit. But I would argue episode 2 was even better. Not only was it more exciting, I mean, how many characters literally over the past 2 episodes have we seen stabbed in the chest? Like, it's been about 5 or 6 over the course of like 30 minutes worth of runtime, and that's kind of insane. But the fact of the matter was, we don't know the identity of the godchild. It could be one of the people following, or it could be a complete distraction. You can't really trust what the enemy says at face glance, and I don't think Anos is really doing that. He's basically doing his own thing, and as he casually ends the episode, we're going on a field trip. Like, these are the moments that really just, I can't help but just gush about, because there is so much about the Misfit of Demon King Academy that on paper is very cliche, very basic, but because Anos is the one in the driver's seat, it just becomes something you can't help but love and gush about. And the concept of him just casually having an underground area that can hold 10,000 people, and he's like, hey, we're going on a field trip next week, and make sure you get your permission slip signed. I can't help but get a kick out of that. But honestly, like, the production of this episode was top tier. Like, there was a good variety of action. There was like zombies that were referred to as ghouls in this episode, where the people were basically turned into mindless husks. There was giant fire blasts. I mean, literally, our girl, when she had like her cannons going off, it basically looked like she trapped them in like a bubble of infernal hell. There was ice attacks. There was just a lot of really cool varieties. But the fact of the matter was, like, had Anos not been Anos, honestly, there was a lot of death flags. Like, everyone was getting stabbed every which direction, and the way they ultimately came out victorious, it felt well earned, but it also felt like these are psychopaths. Like, literally, once they felt like they were defeated, they stabbed their swords and died so that they could be reborn. Like, there was no getting captured. There was no exposing their secrets. To them, as long as they could wound Anos even in just the most smallest inconvenient way, that's enough for them. So, like, they were complete psychopaths. It was like watching a cult, right? And the fact that only Anos would be able to trap someone, being like, you really thought death would be enough to escape me? I'm going to turn you into my servant pigeon. And I'm like, okay, this is the most Misfit thing I think I've seen so far. But I did like it, because the Battle of Wits was pretty fun, because when you think of what Anos will do in terms of, like, a fight, it's generally some pretty cool, like, I'm gonna pull out a bigger sword when you thought you had the biggest sword, or I'm gonna create a spell that you thought no one could ever create. But this time, it was just simply like, it was arrogance versus arrogance, but unlike Anos, this man doesn't have the history to back up that arrogance, because he's overconfident for a reason. And the fact that they detailed it, it almost felt like a gambling anime, like something that you'd see in like a Kakaguri or something like that. It just felt like it was really cool how they detailed it, where you had like these cards where he'd like pass like a question, be like, okay, it's one of my subordinates, okay, it's one of these 4, is it this person, this person, this person? And the fact that there was, in theory, a good rule set, he could lie once, so you start thinking like, okay, well then it has to be her. But then Anos brings up the whole concept of like, yeah, this is all BS, isn't it? And it just kind of like, it just all clicks, and you're like, okay, there's no way this is going to end in the way that he thinks it is. And just to see how quickly everything worked out, the fact that he used a spell to create a source to just make everything seem as real as possible, you just couldn't help but get a kick out of it. I was actually quite surprised though by the opening song. I would actually argue this might be one of my favorite opening songs of the season. Like, visually, there's some good moments for sure, like, there's some really cool action scenes, but it's the song itself that really sold me. Like, there's something about it that I really enjoyed the music of that one, and the ending song's nothing to shy away from either. It just kind of feels like Misfit, it never left, right? It's one of those seasons that just came back, it threw you right back into the thick of it, but it immediately reminded us that there's not a lot of characters like Anos, and that's what makes this entire cast flourish. remove Anos, a lot of these characters, if not a majority of these characters, you're not going to really care all that much about, because they would be a typical character if Anos wasn't around. And even though the whole harem aspect and everyone worshipping the ground he walks on we've seen before, there's room for a character like him, this overconfident, you know is going to win and know is going to be a badass. And you can look at shows like One Punch Man, where you take the parody of like an overpowered superhero who in theory can deal with any opponent with one punch. You have a character like Anos who's thrown into this demon school misfit environment, which it used to be a bit more, but there's at least one or two each season where you have like a demon lord reborn, and you know, we've seen this show a billion times over, but what makes it so fun is you have Anos, who's this overconfident badass who you just know is going to turn any cliche into something, either with your jaw on the floor because holy, look at that thing he just did, like, it was so impressive, or it will just become really, really funny. And honestly, I still like the new VA. Most of what I saw last week when I brought up, you know, the VA was changed, there was a couple of people saying, oh, you know what, I didn't even know the VA changed, like I thought something was different, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But I saw a majority of people say, you know what, yeah, in a perfect world, the VA never would have changed, but this isn't a bad performance at all, and it just feels slightly different. And honestly, an episode like this, where you have him just be so arrogant, so overconfident, and so like, he just felt like he was a king sitting on his throne, his VA just did such a great job. Like, I think if you look at the last episode, there's moments where you could really say, like, I prefer the old voice, or in this case, you're like, oh, this actually fits a little more, because there's something about how dead serious he is at every which direction, but in moments of just pure, like, I'm above you, like, I am Anos, worship me, or at the very least, know your place, peasant. His voice is doing really, really good. I gotta say, the new voice actor, well, I still stick by saying, in a perfect world, we would have changed. This doesn't feel like a downgrade. It feels different, but it still feels like you could have had him from the beginning, and we still would have been singing Anos' praise. It's just because we had two very distinct VAs now performing this character, it's definitely worth bringing up from time to time, but honestly, if anything, episode 2 sold me on the new VA even more than the first episode did, and the first episode I already complimented as him just being different. He's a little more serious, so the comedy moments, they just feel a little sillier in a way, because now you just have this very serious tone when some goofy things are kind of being said, or at the very least they're trying to make you laugh with a joke. In general though, I would argue that season 2 so far, I would say, is a step up visually in terms of production. Yes, we're only 2 episodes in, but we've seen a good variety of attacks, we've seen a good variety of character moments, and honestly it just feels like a slight step up. I'm not saying it looks like a massive jumping quality, but so far with what I've seen, and just, I skimmed the first episode of season 1 a couple days back there, I just wanted to see if maybe I was misremembering, but no, it does feel like there is a little more consistency with this production, and that's good. That's a good sign going forward. The only, I would say, negative I had about this episode is there's that kid, he had like diddle fingers for some reason. I have no idea what was wrong with this dude. Like, in terms of like seeing him get his ass beat was amazing, but there's like 2 or 3 moments where he just started doing creepy hands. He already had a creepy face to begin with. It was just like weird, so I was happy he didn't make it, but I digress. But thoughts and feelings yourself on Misfit season 2 episode 2. What did you think, and what do you hope to see in the next episode? Do let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. Like I mentioned, full live reaction is available on the Patreon, and while you're there, you can also get yourself a video shoutout like a few are about to get here. So we got 3rd Dynasty, Ailun, and Alternate Johnson. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.